Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this very amazing event hosted by Flutter Lagos. So, today we'll be talking about automated testing. And, well, the truth is, I'm not really sure. I know a lot about testing, okay? And I know how well that works. But today, I'll be learning more, and I hope all of us would be doing the same thing. My name is Cynthia Peter Chidera. I am Obiagu on Twitter, and today we would have an awesome day together. So, we'll be going for a short break, and when we are back, we'll talk about who we'll be speaking to and we'll get to meet them properly. Thank you. Hey, welcome and thank you for joining us today. So, once again, my name is Cynthia Peter. I am a Flutter developer and this is Flutter Lagos. Today, we'll be meeting John, the cute John with a face cap, just in case you don't know. And we'll be talking to Kingdom also, the one with the glasses. And today is going to be a lot about testing. So we'll just hear from them and see what their thoughts are about it. Well, I've done my own introduction and we'll just hop on to this. Let's hear from you, John.
All right, everyone. Yeah, hope the code is not too much on your side. My name is John.oo, and I'm a software engineer at Ginger.io. And we are basically out there trying to solve the problem of mental health in the world in a way that has never been done before using technology. Um, yeah, this is a very interesting topic for me, and I'm happy to be here to talk about it with Kingdom. And and hopefully we're able to pass a very interesting message to you today. Yeah, fun fact about me is that I'm one of those persons that will, um, yeah, that will oftentimes mistake L for R. Thank you.
Kingdom, let's hear from you. Tell us who you are, what you do, and any other cute tips you would have for us today.
All right, my name is Kingdom. For work, I'm a software engineer. Aside that, a husband and a dog father. um, Today, we'll be chatting about testing, automated testing. Been doing it for quite a while, but I would like to, hear John's opinions too around testing and, kind of converse and try to find a balance on when and how to do testing. And then it's going to be more like a high level conversation. So you are free to ask any questions if you have any. And looking forward to the chat.
Okay, so that's great. Um, well, before we go on, we would like to know one fun fact. Aside the fact that did you say dog father kingdom?
No, come here. So I have a dog. Her name is Snow.
Oh, please,
She's
by all means, let's
yeah,
see. Oh,
she's going to be 6 months in a couple of weeks. So yeah,
wow.
very playful. Uh, Besides
That
that,
should be lots of work.
yeah, it is. But it's fun. It's fun, especially now that she's beginning to like learn some of the things we are trying to teach her. So it's becoming less of a burden than when she was quite younger.
Oh my,
You all should get a
that's
dog. It's really fun.
no. I'll pass on that offer. Trust me. Nah. Like I can barely take care of myself. I don't know what it's going to look like when I have an extra body to take care of. Please, no, I'll pass.
So for me, it's like I'm I hope to have kids sometime in the future, and so this is like tolerance training because yeah, I need to be a lot more tolerant, and this dog is helping me to get there. So yeah,
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
quite
cool.
interesting.
So John, what about you? So what are you wearing? A lion, a tiger? Just hit us.
himself.
None, none. Exactly. Kingdom, that was perfect. Me, myself, and I.
It's all right then. So let's jump right into it. Um I would say, when was the first time you came in contact with tests? Or when was the first time you realized you had to write one? Maybe a story, or when, or how? What made you realize, oh, yeah, there's a need to write test for this thing? And then when was it? So, Kingdom, please.
Well, I didn't really realize that I need to write tests, and then went ahead to write tests. It was kind of forced down on me by Andela simulations. So
I
I
think
wouldn't say
someone
it's
was
the I wouldn't say it's the most fun thing I had to do during that period, during that crazy period. But yeah, that was how I started writing tests. It was part of the requirements. If you are going to pass through that simulation successfully, you need to learn how to write tests for your applications.
oh, that's cool. What about you, John?
Yeah, interestingly, there's a lot of similarities between what Kingdom said to what I'm probably going to be saying. But mine was, I think my first contact was actually a bit earlier. It was actually through on the same program. You know, when you're trying to get into Andela, they're going to slam you with a lot of the home study materials. And part of that, I have to write tests. Oh, sorry, I have to write programs that are supposed to pass based on some specifications, based on some tests. So yeah, that was my first contact. I never knew that that was a thing till then. And since yeah, and then eventually when we progressed to the simulations program, that's actually when I got to have to write the tests myself. And but yeah, I've actually experienced it earlier, but then I was just writing programs to pass those pre-written tests. Yeah, that was it for me.
Oh, so basically, anybody that is watching is just you knowing that if you don't do it now, you eventually have to do it by force. That's I think that should go to me first because I'm like very guilty. I'm not a test person. Like I'm not. So if I'm working on a team, I have to push it to someone else to work on it. But if I'm working on a personal project, trust me, test doesn't even cross my mind as things I have to do. But maybe eventually one day I'll be forced to do it, right?
We'll see.
So the next thing, what tools do you use to write your tests? Like, are there any tools? Are there anything we should pay attention to? Tools, resources, or even if you have any idea of maybe how some people could learn, you understand if there is a way someone could learn how to write tests, maybe tools, resources, just anything, let us know. John, let's start with you.
All right. Okay. Interesting question. Tools. There are a lot of tools, and most of these tools are they're dependent on stack you're working with. If you're a front end engineer and then you're working with the what do you call it, React. So you're going to be using different tools, and if you're a mobile engineer, you'll be using different tools. And if you're also from the back end, There are tools particular to those environments, and yeah. So for me, I think I am more experienced with working with uh, tools relating to the mobile application development, and then I've worked with Espresso for UI testing, Android native Android development. I've worked with the Flutter test kit that comes with a lot of APIs for automating tests. Yeah, you can write a unit test with it. You can write your UI test and even do what we call widget test in Flutter. Yeah, so those are the technologies I've used over time, and of course, have to write plain Java tests to test my programs, and that is in JUnit 4 and 5. So those are the plugins I would say the tools that I've used so far when it comes to automating tests, and yeah, that's it for me.
Awesome. That's great. Kingdom, what about you? What do you have first?
Yeah, so I've been spending the last couple of years in the web space mostly. So building web servers and front-end applications for the web. And for that, for testing, we mostly use things like Jest. Jest kind of lies in the sweet spot that you can use it for both front-end and back-end tests. So you can assert, that your changes are doing what you expect them to do, given some kind of values. And then there are also other assertion libraries like Mocha, there's Chai that I've worked with in the past. And specifically for React, there is React testing library by Kenzie Dodds. Really nice library for kind of testing the front end, specifically React, testing different components, their behavior, how they render things in the UI, whether those things are actually there in the UI and all of that. And then for things like end-to-end tests, I've worked with Puppeteer and Cypress. So it kind of simulates what happens when you actually run your application end-to-end. So from starting the browser to visiting the URL, starting the application, testing every functionality end-to-end. So yeah, that's a couple of the tools I've used in the past.
Okay, no, that's like a truckload. Maybe is there a way we'll get a list of all this? Yeah, please laugh as much as you can. We deserve it. Just
Yeah, I
kind
can
of
definitely share that.
I'll just compile it maybe into very short, maybe into the description of the YouTube link for anybody that will be watching. YouTube, Jan, I'll need a list of these things after now.
Yeah, for sure. And then also, I think for the community, we'll be making a tweet. So, and then you get to access those things from the tweets. And also, whenever somebody comes to this link, and they get to see them as well. So we'll make them available. But yeah, they're
Okay,
all out there.
that's great. Thank you. Another one. What do you think about test-driven development (TDD)? What do you think about it? What's the good parts or what's the bad? Is it possible to have a bad part, or let's say downside, or maybe challenges? Yes, more of the challenges we have with TDD or the advantages. Just what do you think about it? What's your opinion about test-driven development? Do you think it's a good thing? How many times did it save you? How many times did it throw you in a mud? Like, how long have you stayed working on something or implementing a test that sometimes you feel like, yeah, I don't think I want to be a developer anymore. So let's get to
I Kingdom go first on this one.
it. Okay.
It's actually a very interesting topic. So here is it. I have to be. I think I would strike a balance between being very honest and being very practical. So
Okay.
test-driven development is actually a very, very good approach to writing applications. And one of the benefits that stand out is that you can actually get to implement the features faster, right? So if you write a test, let's say you want to write a test for a function that adds two numbers, right? And then you write your test saying, when given these two numbers, you should return the sum. And then you maybe say, expect that 2 plus 2, will return 4, that kind of stuff. When you're implementing the function, it's a lot easier to know when you've done the right thing. I know that this is a very, very both contrived and also very simple example because 2 plus 2. So, but then in the context of the real application, you might have a lot of things going on in your logic, and you want to maintain, you want to expect a certain result. Writing the test first might make it easier for you to know when you are heading the right direction. So you write the test and you say, okay, these are all the requirements, right? They are already listed in the test, and then you start writing the function to make those tests pass. Now, the area, I won't always recommend TDD. I can be wrong because of this, but this is my personal opinion. Now, if you have a situation where you are trying to build a functionality that you don't have all the information about, then I wouldn't suggest writing tests first. So for instance, ideally, you should have all the requirements, but it doesn't work like that always in the real world. So if there is a situation where you're trying to test out an idea, see what will work, I wouldn't suggest writing tests first. I would say write out what you want to do, like the functionalities that you want. And when you're sure that, hey, that's actually the functionality I want to go with, not these other options, then you can write tests for that. Now, what the test will save you, though it's not test driven, is that if something happens and then you go back into your program and make some adjustments that actually breaks the functionality without you knowing, right? Then your test will start failing, saying, hey, there's a problem somewhere. For instance, let's say you write a function to manipulate an array, for instance, right? And then maybe you're using one of the array methods in JavaScript that will return a new array. And then you later go back to change it to a method that doesn't return an array. It just iterates. Let's say, for instance, you change a for each to a map, or to just change the methods. They all do the same iteration. They all perform the same actions, but their results are not the same, right? If you have a test and then you change something like that, it's going to break, and then you know that, hey, these are actually broken. But if you change it without a test, and then you look at the code, as an engineer, you'll be like, yeah, it actually does the same thing. I just changed the method. But if you don't have something to tell you, hey, the return value is not the same thing, or something like that, then you probably should bug to production. So yeah, that's my opinion on test-driven development. Sometimes it's good, sometimes you can move faster without them, and sometimes you can move really fast with them.
Yeah, I think I'll just go with moving really fast without them.
Cynthia hates testing.
My fault. I can't hide this thing. You people know how these things work. I don't hate testing. I don't know. I don't know.
I guess here to convince you that you should probably start falling in love with whatever it is with it.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
Oh
if you
God.
okay,
Yeah.
I was just going to say that if you have had a situation where you have a function that everything looks good, and then there's just a tiny bit of problem somewhere in the return value, and there are no tests for it, then you would see the result, like you see the value of writing tests, because that could break a lot of things or go unnoticed for a very long time, especially if it's not something that is in a place that is very visible.
Okay. Okay. John, you wanted to say something?
But yeah. Well, TDD from my own point of view, well, in all sincerity, I haven't actually had to do that. I once did that, but not. That was in a training program because I was compelled to write tests before actually writing my programs. But yeah, I haven't actually had to do that. Um, yeah, it's a very nice concept to start with, no doubt about that. And yeah, like Kindle mentioned, it really stands out. And but I mean, in the same situation too, it's something that cannot be applicable at all times, right? So yeah, definitely. For example, now if you're writing a UI test, something that basically just could automate a UI, you don't know what that will look like until you code the UI. Then before you can assess that, okay, this button is here somewhere. Um, And then when you tap on this button, if you're here to code that button, you can't be able to simulate um, actions on it or try to automate it, right? It's not applicable in all situations. Or if you're doing integration test that has a lot of components to it, and yeah, it's it's for me, from my own point of view, it's something that is great when you are unit testing parts of your program, right? You can do test-driven development. Like for if you just have a class and you have a bunch of methods in it, and then you just want to make sure that each of these methods, satisfy the conditions that are supposed to meet, then that makes sense for me to write all the tests and be writing the methods and then running the test to see that they are passing those conditions. Um, but yeah, beyond that, yeah, it's kind of hard to work with, and I'm sure a large number of us will agree with me. It's kind of hard to try to think about your test first. No, some people actually try to make it a lot simple by having a different team do that. So you have the QA team of your engineering team be the ones to write the test. Of course, that's their job, so they will have all the time in the whole world and all the energy to go
Yeah.
go extra miles and write all the tests, and then they're waiting for your program to pass. They're just like in the gates. You must pass all these tests, right? Yeah, in that situation, that's awesome. I think if we would have to separate that, yeah. But in the end, engineers are going to write the test, right? Because you are the one who is writing the program and you have a better understanding of the specifications. So from the technical standpoint, right? So it makes sense for you to be the one to write the test. But yeah, for me, TDD is a good thing. If you can do it, do it, right? Um, if you can't, right, just by all means do what you can, but don't. I would suggest make sure you write your test. I mean, if you, yeah. But I think how you want to go about it, totally up to you. If you have the infrastructure and the budget, the time budget and everything, then you can go that route. But TDD is actually very good if you ask me in general. It says,
Yeah, I think the last thing you mentioned is kind of a very important consideration. So if you have a team that is moving really fast and cannot afford to have you spend a lot of time trying to write tests before writing code, then by all means do what your team prefers. And again, if you're not quite experienced in writing tests, it might take a lot more time for you to write tests before writing the code than when you say, here's the code, then let me test the functionalities. I think one thing to keep in mind is if you should write the test afterwards, make sure that you think of all the possible edge cases. So for instance, let's say you are writing a test to check that a list that contains objects are formatted, like is formatted in the right way. You have to think of, probably the count. How many items am I expecting? If I give it this number of items, how many items do I expect to come back? In what format do I want them to come back? You test if that format is actually if the return format is what you're expecting, and then maybe test things like actual like structure of the format. So you have to think of what the edge cases if you're going to write the test afterwards. But if you have the time and the experience, writing the test first might even help you to think of all those edge cases before going into write your application. And when you're writing it, you already know what you're expecting, and then you just write them straight up.
yeah. And also to add to that, there's actually one thing that I've done, not writing the actual test, but writing the cases, the test cases. Um, just write them and the titles and everything that you expect this program to fulfill in the end. So when you are back to write the actual test, you don't miss any of these edge cases because you already have a predefined structure or what expectations from your program, and then that will guide you and make sure that you cover all the edge cases. So that's actually one of the things I do. If you want to call that TDD, then I'll probably have to change what I said earlier. I'll be doing it, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I think without even asking, you guys answered like maybe 3 or 4 of my questions at a go. Who should write a test, or instances where we should not really consider writing these tests? Like,
By all means, still ask.
I don't know if I still have questions to ask here, but let's see. So generally, like, how would you suggest we make testing a part of um a team process? Because okay, fine, I have this startup. I don't know if I can afford someone that writes tests, or is it possible to just get someone that does the whole testing very well, get the person to write the test, maybe on maybe a 1 week or a 2 weeks contract, and then the person allows the developers to get the job done, or do we get developers to get it done? Like, how do we include the whole testing thing into a team process so nobody is like, I don't know what this test is supposed to do, or how is it supposed to work, or what am I supposed to be doing? For people like me that is not really a big fan, you understand? So, how do we get into the whole testing is part of this process? You can't escape it. It's just like building your front end, you can't escape it. Just like making your project responsive, you can't escape it. How do we make it um, a thing? Like, you don't have to say, nah, it's not my business. It's not what I should worry about or care about. So, what do you think would make it easier for people like us, John?
All right. Yeah. Well, virtually every team that I've worked in happened to have one. Testing has always been a big part of the teams I've worked with, and the one I am currently working in. And so talking about team processes, it's yeah, testing can definitely be in one team process in many ways. Some persons prefer to have it to be their job of the QA team, like they will be the one writing the test, right? And then the engineers will write the code to pass those tests. But in many ways, I wouldn't advise that. While others prefer to have it be something that is actually part of the delivery pipeline, right? So some persons have, like in my team, we have a CI, we have a GitHub Actions, and we also have some CI tools, continuous integration tools that are out there on someone else's server. And for every push you make or for every pull request you raise, right, it try to automate and run all the tests in the application on your code, on the new changes. And so that's how it is a part of our process. And there are also some tools out there that also checks the code, the new code that you've added, your PL, right? How many percentage of that code is tested? And so some teams have it that before you can actually merge in your code, the new code you're adding must be at least 80% covered with test coverage, right? So that is one way. You can have automated tools like continuous integration. We have Code Magic for Flutter, and
Try.
yeah, yeah, there are a couple of other tools like that out there. Code Climate and the rest of them. I think Kingdom will probably know a couple of those as well from his own field. And they're just right there waiting for your code and making sure that you actually pass some specification that your team has defined already before your code is actually merged in. So that's one way to look at it. The other way, like I talked about, is a QA team handling that part, writing tests, and then your code has to pass. So that's another process. Um, yeah, I think that's what I have at the top of my head right now. So let's just hear from Kingdom. Maybe something else will pop in before he's done.
All right. So for me, there are a lot of things that goes into that decision before we kind of say this is who should write test and this is what test we should write. The first thing is the team has to decide what exactly they want to test. Now, if you're writing a web application and you have an API server, you definitely want to test that the server is returning what you're expecting to return for each and every endpoint that you have, right? And then for different parts, happy parts, sad parts, and all of those error parts. Now, in terms of when that decision has been made, okay, hey, we want to test all the functionalities of our API, and then the front end, we want to test all the behaviors. Some teams decide to test the actual UI, like test that this button is here. I'm not a fan of that. I prefer testing the functionality of the UI. So for instance, test that that this page can actually register a user, right? Instead of testing that the button has hello on it, because tomorrow we might just decide to change it to hey instead of hello. So I don't test like those tiny components on themselves, but I just test the functionality. Now, when you've decided what you want to test, that helps you to know what tools you want to use to test them and how you want to add them to your process. For instance, if you are testing just the functionality, it means that for every new functionality that is added in any PR, there should be tests for it. If there is no test for it, then the PR will not be approved, right? So that's like the standard defined by the team. For every new functionality, we need tests. For every change in the behavior of the application, we need a test. For instance, let's say you have an API that registers a user and then updates them, right? You've written tests for them. Now, if somehow you want to change how the update is done, for instance, let's say instead of editing the person's name, we want to make it that if you edit their name, you must edit their username. That's just an abstract example. If that functionality is changed, then you want to also make sure that it's also updated. Because if not, the previous test will not be able to cover for all of that edge case. So that's that for the decision part. The other part is the knowledge. So Cynthia was asking earlier if you want to outsource this to someone who will just come in, write the test, and then your team writes the application. The reason I would say no to that is that writing tests is a lot about understanding the business requirements than just writing tests for some functions. So for every business, there are unique business knowledge that the teammates or the engineers in the team has, and that is because they work with the product managers, they work with the designers, they understand the users. Those things help you know what functionalities you want to be testing, which ones are critical, which ones do you have to make sure that nothing breaks at all at any given time. If you don't have that much knowledge, I don't think you'll be able to write effective tests for the application, right? Now, the other thing is, in terms of figuring out, should you really write tests? Is it that important? One thing I would like to say is that the team needs to consider the cost of not writing tests. If an application is going to break, maybe cost a downtime of 5 minutes, how much money is the company going to lose? Now, could that bug have been like detected if you had written tests, right? Because if you're actually working in a place where, or like building applications that are cost intensive, and then like their downtime could cost, let's say your company has like users that are 7, and they have told the users that our application is going to be up 90% or 99% of the time, right? And then you push a bug that makes the application to go down, and the availability is now like say 80%. Well, the company has broken their license with the users, and this could lead to either lawsuits if it's like a very sensitive field, or maybe like a whole lot of problems. And so you have to think of the cost. What will it cost us if we don't write tests and we push the bug to production? That's one thing. The other thing is, how confident is the team that they can ship something really fast, right? So you hire a team of like 10 engineers, and they are in different locations writing different things, pushing to production. How sure are you that everything that they're writing would not mess up what you previously built? Because you want to make sure that your app is continually running, not like I don't want to stop Nigeria, but if you know the CAC website, if you go in this week, it's working, and when you go in next week, you can't log in. It tells you that user is not found. Like you are an actual user that have registered with this app, and then it's telling you that user is not found. Probably the database link is broken or something, right? So you have to think of, if we are moving really fast and shipping things, how do we build confidence that these things we are building or shipping will not break things? And that confidence can be built by testing. When the application is well tested, the dev who is writing the new code will not be thinking, did my feature break John's feature that he just pushed last week? Probably John has spent the last 1 month building this very complex feature, and then I go and push one small change and it breaks the whole thing that he has done, right? But if he has tests and I have tests, and mine probably would break his own, the test would flag it and say, hey, at this point, we're expecting something and it's returning something else. And that way, the team would have confidence that, hey, whenever we release to production, we are most likely not releasing a bug. And then finally, the last thing I want to mention is that writing tests actually reduces the number of bugs that you'd see. Now, if you think of it this way, if you have less bugs, the engineers will have more time to do the actual work they're paying them for. If the engineers don't have enough time to do the work you're paying them for, probably you tell them, hey, I don't have time for tests. You guys should just write features and push. What would happen in the long time? In the long term, is that they would push more features, and then there are bugs in those features, and then probably your support team will come back and say the users are complaining of this bug, and the engineers will have to go back to fix those bugs. When you think of it, in the end, they would be spending a lot more time trying to fix bugs or trying to find bugs or hunt them down than they would be building features. But if you had thought about, okay, let's just forgo the cost of the time that they used to build this test. Let's allow them to write this test. Then over time, you'll be saving a lot more time in engineering hours. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts around that.
Oh, really? That's cool. Because the thing with testing for me is this. The last company I worked with, what we used basically was codemagic.io, and trust me, it frustrated me a lot. Probably that's why I hate testing more now, because I'll take my time, build this very beautiful UI, make it work, and then just when I'm about to, push this thing and chill for the weekend, it comes back with, ah, no, John, no, no, I'm not a big fan at all. Comes
So,
back
so
with
Cynthia,
lots of complaints and complaints and complaints, and I open my screen and I'm like, what's happening? I thought everything was working. Well,
Cynthia,
truthfully, it helped me work on lots of things. Like I
mhm.
had to make sure that I pass that test or pass that requirement it's given before I'm able to push and then make a pull request and then it gets approved by my CTO. But trust me, it was frustrating not being able to just get things done by instinct and then it just works. Knowing that there is this machine out there that tell you, yeah, Cynthia, you've done well, but it's not good enough. You have to do this to be able to get to this or that. It's crazy. I learned a lot, yes, but I feel like the process is very frustrating. And I mean,
I
frustration
guess
is
it,
part of the job, but I don't take it very well, so it hurts.
I guess it boils down to what I said earlier around decisions, right? So if you're in a
Yeah,
team and the decision has been made to use, I don't know what you call it, code magic, something
magic.
like that.
Yeah,
Now, if the decision has been made to use code magic, for instance, the question will be, what do the engineers need to do so that the code magic, I don't know if it's tests or whatever, so that the code magic could say yes, it's good, right? Now,
yeah,
if the team made that decision and communicated it clearly to every engineer, and you know what the requirements are, then you can build that into whatever UI or whatever functionality you're writing. So
yeah,
let's say something like ESLint, right? For JavaScript, you are writing you are writing a new functionality, and then your local environment does not have ESLint set up. Meanwhile, your GitHub Actions is running ESLint, or your CI is running ESLint. Like, that is obviously going to be very frustrating, because you finish writing something, nothing is happening on your local environment, and everything looks good, and then you push it and you're seeing errors. But if you have it in your local environment and you know what you're expecting, you write something, it says, hey, you need consistent return, or maybe this is an anonymous function and we don't support that in this like code base and all of that. You already know what you're expecting and you can already prepare for that. That's one. The second one is, do you write everything and then wait for when you're about to close work and push them? If you do that, that's like a recipe for like a very serious frustration, because because code magic or whatever it does not care that you're going for a weekend. Like,
not really. So
it does,
what happened was, Yeah, I think what happened was at first we were testing I think he wrote the test manually, the CTO I mean. But then at the point, I don't know what happened, he then introduced Code Magic. That was like in the middle of the project. And then at that point, Code Magic obviously had to test like from top to bottom. So even all the ones we've done prior to that time and the one I just did to test, run the first step, because the first step I also wanted to run through a button I just worked on. So I also wanted to run through it, not like the UI though, like the functionality and all that. And then that was when the whole thing messed the code up. He just told me this. And I'm like, come on, all these things are working now. I just wanted to test just the button, and then now I'm having issues. Well, I was very thankful because I at least testing the button, I figured that I had lots of things I had to work on. It was going to be one hell of an experience if I had finished everything, if I had finished everything I had on my task that week before I tested. So yeah, it's really is a good thing. I just feel I'll still not use it personally, except
I
I'm
think
pushing to production.
I
Oh,
think
okay.
yeah. Go ahead, John.
Kingdom, by all means.
Sorry, I was going to say that if the engineering process is done properly, then you wouldn't like. I don't think it's your fault that you had that frustration. I don't think it should make you hate test. It's just that the engineering process was bad. It's like
Yeah,
me working with you on the team, and then I introduce something that would change the way we are formatting our whole code base. For instance, in the middle of the project, I had prettier, right, and then I put some weird prettier rules that we have not been following, and then I put
yeah,
a rule that CI cannot pass if prettier does not pass. Like that is the recipe for frustration for anyone who is the first to make a change after that introduction, right? So it's not your fault that you are frustrated. It's just I'm going to blame that on the engineering process. If there is the right engineering process and everyone knows that hey, this is the new introduction, probably there would have been like a ticket to say get our code to be on the same standard with Code Magic before adding features, and that way you don't have to start battling with something that is not your. I mean, you added the button. Why are you going to be writing tests for other things like? So yeah, that's my thoughts. The engineering process needs to be fixed.
yeah. I think so too. So I don't know. Basically, we've answered all our questions because
Okay.
uh,
Cynthia, with
yes,
you.
is
Yeah.
that
Um, I said, can I drop one or two to the conversation?
okay? Sure, please.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. So in the end, so I think this whole talk is all around why should we even do this in the first place? Why
Yeah,
I have to do this, right, as a software engineer or as a team or even have it in my team process. Why should that be? And then I just want to point out a few things, just to make this thing clear. Yeah, until you figure out or you see the need to do this, it may not seem so important to you, or until you figure out what the cost would be, the cost of not doing it, right? It may not still seem a lot of it may not seem like something that will add a lot of value to your process or to your team. But yeah, like Kingdom mentioned the other time, see, what is the cost, right? Some teams, right, they don't want a situation whereby, just imagine you wake up one morning and Facebook is not live, right? Or Gmail is not working. So, there's a whole lot that goes into the application. There's a lot of people on that application that you just don't want things to break out of ignorance, right? And one of the things that tests will help you to do is actually to help you figure out these things in time. And these teams, like most of these teams out there, they have a lot of people working on those applications, those products. And most of these persons are not even in the same location. Tech teams these days are super diverse. Um, yeah, not just by people in it, but by location and all that. So you have people from different locations working on the same product. How do you ensure that one person's change does not override another person's change? How do you ensure that when somebody is trying to add value to the business, is not trying to kill the entire business, right? Yeah. And that's actually one of the things that test does for you. It helps you, to figure out these things before it gets into the hands of the users. So you want to move fast. You want to go fast. There's a lot of competition in the market today when it comes to tech products. Um, yeah, I know there was this company that was that was also all about moving fast, but they were not very mindful of the quality that they're pushing out there, and oftentimes people are running into issues with their products. And you see many people tweeting about that, right? So moving fast actually can mean breaking things, and it's actually when I realized these things, that's when actually I have to fall in love with testing. I have to, because I've seen the value in it. It's so valuable, right? And if you're not doing it, well, it could be that you're just writing a simple to do application, right, for yourself, or you're just building one app that's going to wake you up in the morning and serve you coffee. I mean, by all means, you're just writing the code for yourself. Uh, fine, it's fine not to write tests. I guarantee you that. So when it breaks, you bear the consequences, and then you fix it yourself, right? There's
Yeah,
no stakeholder. But when you have people that you're serving, and when your product is actually, you know, bringing value to people's life, and you have to make sure that at least if you want to have production issues, it should not be more than twice a day, twice a year. It should not be more than that, right? Yeah, no, you should try to minimize downtime as much as you can. And that is why most of the teams that you're going to end up working with or working for, and the one you're probably going to build tomorrow, you're going to incorporate this, because whenever we have to collaborate to build a product, testing has to be a part of the process. And it's very, very important because it's have to keep the entire team in check. It's have to make sure that one person's change is not breaking another person's change. And funny enough, it can actually go beyond the person's working on a product at the same time, at a particular time. So we've had this situation where somebody wrote some program, the person is not in the team anymore, and he also wrote some tests, right? And then uh, a developer from a new developer came into the team who has zero understanding of what is already in the code base, or also trying to add his own contribution. So making change to one part of the code base, but not knowing that he is actually like completely, you know, breaking something in another part of the code base. So that's one of the things that tests will do for you. So if there's a test, before you even actually get to have your code get merged into the repository they develop, like we all know, it must have gone through all the tests that are already pre-existing must have run, and then they've all passed. That means what you've done currently did not break something else. So in that situation, with unit tests, you have a lot of confidence in your products. Of course, it's not going to be 100% because sometimes things still creep into production and things will break, but to a very large extent, right? It gives you a lot of confidence, right? So, well, for investors, I don't know about investors over here, but I know that some investors over there in America, in the Western world, so to speak, uh, before they actually try to, invest in your product, which maybe perhaps you're doing a fundraising, right? They have technicians that will want to look at the quality of product before they actually invest in it. So they're not just after, okay, how is this thing making money? And they also want to see the sustainability and the strength of what they are putting their money on. So that is a very, very important consideration. You want to impress your investors. You want to give them the best impression that you could give them, so that they can give you the money, so that you can do your business. Tech debt is also one of the things that I know testing can actually keep you away from. Tech debt, just like from the word debt, you owe your code base to do something right, but you not to do it right at a particular time. But if you build your product with testability in mind, right, it keeps you far away from tech debt. Again, not 100%, but to a very large extent, it keeps you away from that. So if you're testing as you're growing, it simply means that at every point in time, right, for new features and things, new initiatives that come into the application, you have a very high test coverage. And the fact that they are even testable simply means that you built your application in a very, very well structured manner, such that you don't have spaghetti here and there. Otherwise, you won't be able to test your product. You won't be able to test your app. So everything yeah, we all have been hearing about the solid principle and all the things that it's trying to push to the world. Those things are super valid. And when you are building with testability in mind, some of those things that you're going to be implementing, the principles in the solid principle, you're going to be doing that. Otherwise, you won't be able to test your product. So, this is good, right? It's really good. I tell you, yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, thank you very much, Jan, for that insight. I think it's something I'll have to go back to look through. Maybe this time do it for myself, even for maybe the tiniest application I've ever built, maybe a calculator. Now, this time is just to understand the process and be able to just find a way to accept how it works. All right, because I feel what happened was the last experience, or my first and my last experience, was kind of overwhelming because I was in this hot seat. I had to get my deliverables straight, and then there was this new technology invented in the middle of everything, so it got me kind of messed up. So since then, I've always like dreaded the thought of tests. That's the funny truth. You know how these things work. But since this event came up, I had to go back, look through some things, and yeah, maybe it's not that bad, and maybe I'll just pay attention to it more often now. So, do we have anyone that will go? Maybe last words, final takes, anything, a hint, just anything. Let's round up already. So,
Yeah, or we could also take a few questions if there are any.
okay. Basically, okay, we have someone. Someone says, "What resources can I use to enhance writing productive tests for testing functionalities while developing Flutter apps?" So I think, John, I think that's where you would come.
Oh yes. Well, talking about resources, I want to believe you're talking about the tools you could use, right? Well, the Flutter framework itself,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, it has the Flutter test, Flutter underscore test. I would call it a plugin that you can actually use. It comes once you do create Flutter app, it comes straight with the boilerplate code that you get, right? So, and you can use that to automate tests. You can test your widget. You can actually do test driver test. Okay, I think the test driver test has its own components, but yeah, it's also from the same team. So the product team also did that as well. So you can use that, and yeah, you can also do your unit testing, which also comes from the product test. You can test your plain that code. You just start with the main function, and then inside the main function you do some setup, and then you have tests. It's a function, and yeah, you can actually assert virtually anything you want to assert. You can check for booleans, you can check for numbers, you can check for arguments to something. So Mockito, also there's a Mockito plugin in Flutter which can actually allow you to mock out external dependencies like the HTTP request library. You can use that to mock that out and be able to write your test independent of external dependencies. Like for example, if you have plugins in your application, and of course, most of these plugins are actually making platform calls to your native Java or Swift code, to get some things from the OS, to serve you and all. You don't want to write your test depending on those. So you want to write your test independent of those. You want to believe that the plugin itself has written test for their code and they've done what they're supposed to do, right? So Mockito is actually a very useful plugin or tool, so to speak. We do use it in my team, and it's very very helpful to yeah, when it comes to automating tests, it gives you that flexibility. For example, you want to test your view model, but you don't want to care about the service layer, the part that makes the call to the network. You just want to take that out and then just say, whenever I attempt to get some data from the network, just return this data. And then you can use that to completely test out your view logic and making sure that your business logic is on point. Yeah, that I want to believe that that helps.
Yeah, I would probably what I'll do is maybe after this call, I'll just I think I have some resources I bookmarked both on Twitter and some channels on YouTube. We'll probably tweet about it. So anyone watching this, you just have to check the Flutter Lagos Twitter channel and maybe a newsletter to just give a summary of all we did today. So I don't think we have any more questions. I don't think we have any more questions. So I'll just say, do we have any final words? Anything we'd like to say? Just a sentence or two or three. So we'll just get back to work for the day. Kingdom, anything for us?
Well, I'd like to say I'm not getting back to work, Cynthia. Today is Saturday, for Christ's sake.
That's a lie. That's a
Yeah,
big
so this has been
because
very.
after now you're going to be caught behind your screen working.
So funny thing is that ideally I don't touch my computers on Saturdays and Sundays. Like,
oh my!
Yeah, if you check my GitHub, you'd rarely see anything until recently when I started building a product on the side. That's the only thing that made me start touching my computers, and then schoolwork. Yeah, but besides that, I don't work on Saturdays and Sundays. So yeah, last words. I think it's been fun talking about this. Some of the highlights I would mention is that it's good to write tests. It's good to write test-driven, like follow test-driven development patterns if you are able to, or if you can afford to. But then, if you can't afford to do that, always make sure you write tests. Think about the cost implication, what your team would stand to lose if you push a bug to production. That could have been prevented if you had a test, right? So make sure you have the right engineering processes when you want to start writing tests, so you don't frustrate Cynthia again.
Yes, please.
And then there are a ton of tools out there, but it depends on what your team wants to test and how you want to approach testing. That's what will help you know which tools are best for you and which tools are not useful to you. So yeah, that's a quick overview of what we've been talking about so far from my end.
Oh yeah. Okay. Thanks, Kingdom. At this point, I would like to say thank you so much for jumping in to do this with us. All of us from Florida Lagos, we are very, very happy to have you. And thanks for the insight and everything. And for me, I mean, once again, it's also very, very, it feels good to, be on the same screen with you, chat about something. It's been a long time, actually. It's been a long time. Oh yeah. So yeah, for me in general, I know one of the reasons why we actually decided to have this talk is because there was this argument I woke up to one morning on our page. And yeah, if you're not on those pages, we have Telegram page, a Telegram page, and then we also have a Twitter account. Please, by all means, join us. There's a lot. We help people out. We unblock one another. We also advise one another. Like people woke up and they were all talking about tests, and folks were like, "No, I ain't doing this." Right? And then yeah, we try to convince one another to on the right engineering principles. As we all are growing and we are growing side by side, it makes the growth very, very fast because we are learning from one another on a daily basis. And then, yeah, helping one another fix bugs is actually one of the things that we do very often in those pages that we have the whole community in. And yeah, so in general, yeah, I would say at this point I'm in love with testing. and it's something that whenever I write a program and I write tests for the program, or yes, and either way, when everything passes like that, Kindle, do you know that joy, that feeling when all your tests are passing, right? Like it's just so amazing. At times, like
Especially
it's one of the things like
after struggling to fix them for a while.
exactly. I mean, there are some tests that you actually spend some days on. I'm telling you, right? But when you eventually get it right, like you feel like you have some superpowers, like Magneto and the rest.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it feels
I
good.
agree.
If you know that your code doesn't just only make sense to you, but it also makes sense to the CPU, to the computer, and and it gives a lot of confidence in what you've done. So yeah, but if there's anything I'm preaching here today is this is something you need to love. Otherwise, you feel frustrated by it. It can be frustrating. It can be time consuming. But yeah, just be very open to it because it's very, very valuable as a software engineer for you to have this skill at your disposal. And not just the skill, have the passion for it. Enjoy it. Find a way to like it. Of course, it's going to give you burnouts, one of every now and then, but just find a way to enjoy it. Right? Make it something that is a part of you. Embody it. Yeah, and try to do it yourself. I think that's it from me.
Okay. Thank you very much, John. Thank you so much. So thank you, Kingdom, for joining us today. We had to steal you and take like an hour of your time to talk about
My wife has
testing.
speaked. She's like, "You guys not done yet?" Because
Oh, sorry, Mama. Sorry, Mama. We're sorry. We're sorry.
Um, this is a pressure. Okay.
Okay. Before someone comes for our head, John. At this point, we'll have to let Papa go. We'll have to let him go. Because the next person that will probably jump on the screen will be his baby girl right there. So we wouldn't want to try, right?
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
thank you
mm-hmm.
so much for joining us today, and we really hope that we could have you here again, maybe some other times, talk about other things, other fun things you're doing too. Thank you
yeah,
so
that's
much,
that's
and
cool.
let's do this again.
Thanks for having me and enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah, bye. Ciao.
Thanks, man. All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you. Okay, thank you for joining us today, everyone. And watch out for our social media pages, Flutter Lagos on Twitter, and we have a Telegram group. We have WhatsApp groups also, but mostly Telegram group is really open to everybody. You can join us there, ask your questions. We help each other get unblocked. Trust me, we all relate to the whole getting stuck and not getting out of it. So it's really important to join a community that are going through the same phase you're going through. So it's easy to just let it out there and just grow from it. And that would be it for us today. If there are any questions or anything you need to get figured out after now, you can reach out to me on Twitter, or you can reach out to the Twitter channel Flutter Lagos, or you reach out to John or anyone in the Flutter community and you get help as soon as possible. Thank you for joining us and let's do this again.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Yeah, bye.